Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. Some breaking news on a Friday, confirmation that R360 will not launch in 2026. With the project seemingly dead in the water, an official press release has been sent out to say that the project has been basically put on ice and has been delayed by 2 years with an aim of trying to get it off the ground in 2028. This is coming after all the various unions, apart from a couple, sent out basically a joint statement saying that any player that would go and play in the R360 would render themselves unavailable for selection for international sides. And the British and Irish Lions also jumping on the bandwagon this week, sending out their own press release saying much the same thing. And now we have confirmation that there will definitely not be an R360 league in 2026 at least, as they try and rebuild towards 2028. Before we get into the press release, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Let me know what you think of the R360 concept and the proposal, and whether you think it might ever hold a bit of weight. But this is basically what has been sent out this morning. And it says that R360 plans to launch full global series in 2028. And they said that following consultation with various stakeholders, R360, the Global Reach series, has taken the proactive decision to launch its full season in 2028. This is very clever, to be fair. The main thing of obviously 2028 is that's the year after the World Cup. So this is the big problem that they were having. Players who want to play in the 2027 World Cup will never going to sign with this R360 because it effectively ends their international career. However, post 2027, there will be players looking for a final big paycheck. It said that the R360 board and its investors, led by non-executive chairman and investor Martin Gilbert, have determined that a full launch in 2028 offers stronger market conditions, exactly what was mentioned, greater commercial certainty, and a significantly more favorable environment for players, fans, partners, and the broader rugby community. The decision will provide the necessary runway to strengthen the R360's credibility, continue collaborative discussions and partnerships with rugby stakeholders, and position the league to launch at full scale with maximal global impact from the outset. I mean, I think we've known for a while that this was never going to get off the ground next year. There were no, players announced, for example, no sort of big coaches announced and the likes of that. And apparently, the big thing was that the player agents, a lot of player agents who have been having these conversations, have been engaging with R360 about potential big deals. They were told that on the 1st of October that a new plan or an update was going to be issued. That did not come. And basically, they had given the R360, board or whatever, a deadline of the 1st of December saying had they not received any sort of plan, then they were going to walk away. And apparently, a lot of the player agents are already ready to walk away because they are not convinced that the R360 is going to sort of happen or going to basically be a significant enough event to be able to attract their players. So this has been dead in the water for next year for a while. What's interesting is obviously the fact that they are still trying to get it off the ground. They're still going to try and make it a thing. Now, I think that the concept could work. It sounds strange, but I think it could work. But I don't think it's going to be as big as they want it to be. As I said, 2028, you've now got an opportunity to go target marquee players and you throw big money for them. I'm talking about Bowden Barrett, for example. I'm talking about Asia Khaleesi. Players like a Eben Etzebeth from a South African perspective, even your Geordie Barretts, your Rico Awanis, for example. If you look at Australia, they've got quite a young side, but somebody like a James Slipper, if he was sort of retiring now, a World Cup, for example, maybe look at an extra year next year. If you look at overseas, your players like Gary Ringrose, for example, even a Ty Byrne, your Ty Furlongs, players who are sort of into their 30s. You can now sit there and think, well, we get to a next World Cup, we play 2027, and after that, what is the plan? You play another year or two of international rugby and kind of call it a day, or else do you go and join this global league where you don't have to play as much rugby, so it's not as physical, demanding on your body, and you go get a massive paycheck? We're seeing a lot of players kind of going to France for the last couple of years, or taking the Japan route out to get that last big paycheck. This is going to be what I think the R360 will be. So I think initially they're going to sort of target your superstars, your Cheslin Colby, your Anton DuPonts, your your Will Jordans, Bowden Barretts, Cheslin Colby, your Thomas Ramoses, for example, maybe Gregory Aldred, You look at Ireland, your Ty Burns, I suppose maybe even Dan Shentus, your Josh from the Flares. All the players are kind of getting a little bit older, and basically say they can play one more World Cup and then come through. Your George Fords, for example, Owen Farrell potentially. Andre Pollard, I think would be an interesting one as well. You've got lots of potential players who could make the switch if the offer was there. But basically, it's going to become a bit of a finishing school initially, and that will be their big challenge. Now they'll go and target some young big players. You think of somebody like an Arundel, who's obviously got made the move to France, the likes of that. So very high profile player. You think of players like what they've done what Wallabies have done with Joseph Akusa Suali'i. So they'll definitely go and try and target young prodigies. Like a Sasha Gomezulu, for example. And Sam Prendergast, those sort of players where they can go and try and find big name players, the next generation players, and pay them big money to try and give the league credibility. Because at the moment, it's quite likely to almost be a bit of a retirement league, inverse in commas, or a league for players who kind of haven't quite ever sort of been able to make it. So if you've got a player, for example, I don't know, in a South African perspective, somebody like a Beno Jasper Rensburg, for example, who, to be fair, might be able to play for England next year. But Jean-Luc Duprez, for example, players who've kind of been on the radar but haven't quite ever been able to lock down a spot, but are quite high-profile players. The R360 then offers an interesting opportunity for them, especially your South African-based players, your Marcel Coetzee, Warwick Gelant, those sort of players where they're sitting there going, well, maybe this is the big paycheck. I'm not going to play for the Boks once again. And I could basically double my earnings, maybe triple my earnings, and play less rugby. A bit of like the live golf approach. That is essentially what it is. Now, whether this gets off underground, I'm not entirely convinced. I think a lot more has to be put in place, and a lot more certainty has to come from the R360. They'll obviously have to start announcing players and coaches, for example. I mean, coaches are a big one. I don't see, for example, a Rassie Rasmus going down this route, but maybe Jan van Kraan, given the fact that the Bok job isn't really available. Franco Smith doesn't seem to be getting very close to getting to that Scottish job. So maybe, those are coaches who will be drawn towards an R360. A Jake White, for example, could be drawn to this. Maybe somebody like if a Scott Robertson doesn't make it to the next World Cup, maybe he goes to the R360, because obviously the coaches are also an important part. So I do think that, if you're R360, this is the right move. I think they were so far behind already. What will be interesting now is that they've now got 2 years to try and secure sponsorships, to try and get players, to try and get coaches, to try and get managers, for example, even key players and key partners in this involved. So it does offer them the best opportunity to get it going. Whether it'll succeed, I don't know. I'm not convinced. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash the like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.